right, good morning, everyone. So, as always, I've got a couple of housekeeping items up top. You are in Coffee with Miss Cook, your Dean of College and Gap Year Advising at JCHS. Um, I'm going to ask everyone, the default in my room is to stay on mute at the beginning. So I will ask you to just sort of be on mute as we do a little content up top. And then we'll take questions either live or in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. We are recording. I will distribute this by the end of the week, hopefully, once we get it up on YouTube. And just a reminder, these are meant to be an hour-long program. If we run out of questions, great. But if we run right up until 9, we will have a hard stop then and pick it up next time. Or you can always email me or Julie Beck, who is our special guest this morning. So with that, just a couple of words from me about what's happening right now with your kids in the process. We've, of course, just finished course scheduling last Friday. Hopefully, all the forms were in. I connected with many of you, with most of your kids, about their 12th grade classes. This conversation will continue over the next few weeks as we make sure eligibility for advanced courses, is sort of clarified by the end of the year. If there are any schedule issues that arise, I know there are a number of senior classes that just run once. So sometimes Ms. Bregman will have to follow up and say, okay, well, we've got a little bit of a schedule situation here. What's your preference? Know that seniors do get priority as she's trying to make the schedule. So we do our best to make sure that your kids actually get the classes that they've asked for. But generally, I'm feeling good about the plans for next year, and I hope you are too. In terms of college advising and kind of what to do in this moment, students should continue to be exploring various college options as time allows. So doing some research online, maybe attending some virtual college events as they're able to, general info sessions or things about particular programs. You may be also planning some in-person visits, either during Pesach break on some of our longer weekends, or thinking about summer visits as well, which are great. So we just want students to continue building that following list in SCORE, places that they are thinking about, are actively thinking could be an option for them, or conversely, moving some of my suggestions into that I'm not interested column and adding some of your own. And of course, feel free to continue connecting with me as questions arise. I have a lot of open appointments on my calendar over the next few weeks. Things will pick up a little bit after journeys as seniors are getting some of their final decisions and then need to make some final decisions. But please access me as necessary. And then we will start our last round of formal spring college advising meetings after Pesach break. I will meet with everyone in the class again, make sure that we've got some stuff buttoned up as we go into the summer. But of course, I work into the summer, so college advising does not end with graduation. Okay, so with that kind of business talk out of the way, I'm hoping for this month's coffee, and hopefully you've got some coffee or something. I've got a little water for me right now, is to turn to conversation about the social emotional piece of this process. Students really experience a range of emotions, as you may be starting to get, or if you're an old hat at this, you've had some older kids off to college already, know that as they work on their search, there may be some excitement about what's next. There may be some frustration or regret as they look at what some of maybe the limits might be on their process, as they start to understand the scope of what they need to do over the next few months, and perhaps feeling even a little wistful or fearful about leaving home. This is all totally normal. So this is where I want to bring in Julie Beck, who is our school counselor, the director of advising. She is so well versed in this process. She has been sort of helping our students manage the roller coaster of emotions that they go on, the big feelings that they have throughout the process, the feelings of vulnerability that come up as they share parts of themselves in their applications, and is probably understanding it in a new way as she's the parent, of course, of a senior right now at JCHS. So she's going to share some advice on how to help care for your students through this process, especially if this is your first time. So I will turn it over to Julie.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lauren. It's nice to be here, and it's nice to see you and your names on the screens. So many wonderful families here. So yeah, I mean, as Lauren said, I've been supporting the process, with juniors and seniors I've been here 19 years at JCHS. I am in a unique position this year as a parent going through the process. So I do have a new role, and I often have to remind myself of my own guidance that I will be sharing with you. And so I say that to name that it is an intense process for the students and for parents. And I do want to encourage you to trust it as much as possible. We are in really good hands with Lauren here at JCHS, and that in of itself can be reassuring. Um, and I want to encourage you. I'm going to give you all a couple tips. First of all, I just want to remind everybody to keep track of the big picture. And the big picture is we want our kids to be well. We want them to find a school that's a good fit for them, and we want to go through this process and what comes next with as much health and uh, uh, confidence and capability and learning and growth as possible. Um, and it really, I mean, after seeing this for, such a, almost 20 years of watching high schoolers going through this, um, there really is a school for everyone, and there's a fit for everyone, and it's not the same for everybody, and it doesn't need to be. And so, I'm sure you've heard from Lauren, and you will continue to hear that there are so many schools out there and programs and ways to do the college experience, and there isn't a right way. And so, as much as you can believe in that and trust in that, and sort of have your kids' unique needs in the forefront of your mind as you're doing that, that'll be helpful. Um, as you can imagine, the whole college process is a lot. And for an 11th grader starting to think about what comes after high school, there's like they're thinking about their courses and what they need to take for college and how they look for college and the applications and doing it all. And then somewhere they're also supposed to be thinking about where do I want to be and what kind of school do I want to go to and maybe what do I want to be when I grow up. And so it's a lot to process, it's a lot to hold on to. Um, and some of them think about this a lot, some don't. My one piece of guidance is as much as possible, take their lead on how much you want to talk about it with them. Your teens might want to talk about it all the time. If it's the only thing they can talk about, it's probably good to remind them that they have other things going on in their lives as well. If they don't ever want to talk about it, right now, that's still okay. They do need to, I mean, I probably at this point they've already done it, but they need to fill out their questionnaire for Lauren and meet with her. And there's some basics they need to be doing at this point. You probably want to be doing the score list and all of that. And so it is important, and Lauren will encourage this for that they do the minimum right now. Um, but they might not be as engaged or as excited as you are. So I would encourage you to sort of take their lead and start where they're at. They might have less tolerance or bandwidth for thinking about and discussing this, and finding that balance between, well, we need to figure out if we're going to visit some schools, or let's think about what you might be interested in, reminding them that these visits, especially in the beginning, some of them are really just to get a sense of what you might even be interested in, the types and sizes and locations, as opposed to, do you definitely want to apply here? Like there's still like a soft entrance into the process. Um, and so I just want to encourage you to remember that if your kid isn't super into it yet, that's okay. If they're thinking about, they remind them there's other stuff going on. And in the middle of that, when you're planning, visits to colleges, particularly the spring and summer and in the fall, my advice to parents is for you to take on the logistics, schedule the flights or the hotels, or, you might have a better sense of what your schedule is going to be. So maybe you're signing up for the campus tours and the campus visits. If you can take the logistics on, that's a lot less for your teen to have to hold, and they can hold the more existential thoughts about it. And even just some of the more simple ones of like, do I like what these buildings look like and stuff. But it gives them space to not deal with the logistics. And as they get older, they'll get more ready to do that. But this is still an appropriate time to do that for them. And going back to thinking about how much it may or may not be on their minds, um, from the parents' end, you might find that college is on your mind a lot more than it's on your teenagers. And so I want to remind you to take breaths whenever you need to and not make it the primary family conversation or the biggest thing that's going on. For those of you who, who want to talk about it a lot, but your teen doesn't want to, you might need to set some plans and say, hey, we do have spring break coming up. We're going to visit some schools. So Thursday evening, let's talk about what we're going to do, or, let's check in on Sundays to figure out, what our planning is going to be so that they know when the conversations are going to happen and they also know when they're not. Um, if you are, if you're both all really interested in the conversation, they might flow more naturally. But even for your end as a parent, it's going to be important to make sure you talk about other things with them and bring up their other things going on in their life. And I often have to remind myself this as a parent myself because it's exciting and a little nerve-wracking to think about their college experience, their college process. But they might not be thinking about it as much as you, and that's okay. And so, not only do I want to remind you to come up with other conversations and give them space from talking about college, the my biggest message, and those of you who have heard me speak before know that I always say this, um, make sure you are taking care of you during this process because um, college can bring up a lot of excitement and anxiety and overwhelm and memories or hopes or expectations for parents when they're thinking about their own children. And so it can be an intense process just watching your kid go through it. And so, however, I can help you as so you're not putting your worry or stress or anxieties onto your student. However, Lauren can help you. We're here. Keep up with your own self-care, whether it's your, exercise or your passions or your hobbies or your own support systems. This is a good time to lean on all of that, knowing that it's an intense process that has ups and downs. Um, Particularly as they're starting to work on their applications. I think for some families, that can be intense because you're worried about, are they meeting the deadlines? Are they getting this done? Are they writing their essays? Are they looking at this stuff? And so it is appropriate to sort of have a plan with your kids. Um, on this Sundays, we're going to check in about this stuff. Um, However, I also want to encourage you to know, that Lauren is reminding them about this stuff. And so, I mean, she's not going to be on top of them and make sure they get it done, but she will give them really appropriate deadlines in advance that then give them the opportunity to have her support. And so even if it's just checking in with them and saying, "Hey, have you paid attention to Miss Cook's deadline?" Um, that will help. But it does take some time management on their part. And they will probably appreciate any support they can get from you. That's the kind they want. And they might turn away from support if it's what you think they need, but maybe not what they think. And so finding gentle ways to sort of set some boundaries with them and say, we do need to talk about this. These are the things you need to get done. Here's some internal family timelines that we're going to use, but also recognizing that it's okay if they're not thinking about it all the time. It is a big balance for parents to hold, and it's a big balance for the kids, of course. Um, so just, my big four takeaways are: one, remember that there's a fit for everybody, and it just might not always be the same for each person. Two, whenever you can, help them with the logistics and take that off their plate. Three, be patient with your student and either help them find ways to talk about the college process or help them find ways to stop thinking about it when needed. And be patient with yourself because it is a long process. For for those students who apply early and are accepted early, and we're seeing this with seniors now and already know where they're going, it can be glorious and exciting, but then they still have to spend, whenever that is they hear in October or November or something, they have from then on remembering to be a student and to still be present and do their schoolwork. For the seniors who are still waiting, as Lauren said, they're going to be finding out in the next, I think, month or so. It's a lot of patience and a lot of unknowns to sit with. And so that means as a parent, you're sitting with a whole range of excitement to unknowns and everything that falls in between. And so I wish you peace for the process. I am here to be a support however I can. And just, remember that you don't have to know it all already. It will unfold. And we are very, very lucky to have Lauren's guidance. So that's me rambling. I'd love to open up to see if there's any questions or needs or anything. And I just want to add, as I said this before, it sounds simple to like, oh, just, follow their guidance. And meet your kids where they're at. But, it takes a lot of self-checking. And as I've said, I have to do that a lot this year myself as we're going through the process. So not only am I here for you, but I also really empathize with what's going on.
Thank you so much, Julie. Does anyone have any questions for Julie about this piece of things, which is a big piece of things? You can either raise your Zoom hand or put something in the chat. Anything either from your own experience with older children or things you're wondering, thinking about with your current kid.
And if you don't have things you want to talk about now, please know you can reach out to me.
Yes, and if it's not appropriate for the group conversation, that's fine too. You can always email Julie personally. I will also say that I'm certainly here for meetings as you need to just either vent a little bit or problem solve on how to keep the peace at home, because I know that can also be a challenge with this. Wendy, did you have a question?
I did. Hi. So I know that we often say, and I do believe it's true that like you will find your place and like this kind of college search, but are there any sort of tips of sort of how to kind of, I guess we have some questions of like helping them evaluate the colleges, but to help them feel that that's true, to help them feel that they're like kind of thinking about places. I mean, is it really just, I mean, they went through it with high school for a lot of them, right? If they saw another school, they kind of were like, oh, this is the right place, and sort of those intangibles. But I guess, is there any sort of more direct support of like either reassuring them that that's true? Asher's not like super concerned, but he also doesn't express emotion. So I just like to be kind of on top of it ahead of
Right.
time, or saying those things, even though he may not express any concern. He's like, yeah, it'll be fine. But um, I guess just that kind of idea of like, how to help them know that's true or how to help them figure out what the right place is, like how to assess when they're kind of looking at places.
Yeah, I mean, I can say I think of this as kind of three categories that, you know, there are, as we talked about with the kickoff night, like hopefully some set of priorities that the student has, right? That there are things that they are looking for, whether it's academically or Jewishly or extracurricularly or in terms of location or weather, which I hate that one, but it's real, I don't want to be super hot either. So having that set of your own priorities that you can kind of overlay with a given school and see, does it on the face of it check some of the boxes of what I know I would need for a good fit. I think there's also then the vibe check of when you go to a campus and what you see. Do you see a pile of beer cans? Do you see kids that seem unhappy? Do you see people that seem really psyched about where they are? Is everyone out playing frisbee and happy? So some of that sort of experiential, if you're able to get to a campus. But then there's also a piece of it that I think you're just going to go on faith, right? You never can know for sure that some place is the right spot for you. So I think there is a bit of a jump off the diving board at some point that with the information we have, we are making the best choice we can. I do occasionally engage students with transfer conversations. That happens. No one plans to transfer, but sometimes reality is different than, what your research indicated. And, there's limits to what a visit can tell you about a place. So those would be kind of the things that I'm thinking about. Julie, I don't know if you've got other.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a range, but I think sort of the reassurance, that there's a place for you and that even like there can be meaning to this process and this experience and I get part of what you're saying, Wendy, is also like sometimes our kids don't always express what they're feeling and we want to just be sure that internally there's some level of comfort or confidence that they have going into this. And so I do think those initial visits to schools, whether they're ones that students can apply to or even in a region they're going to apply to or not, one of the most important things I've heard over the years that Lauren says is try to visit like a small, medium, and large, or like a urban and rural or campusy and urban places, because that often will give students some level of inspiration or some sense of like, oh, I do see myself in this kind of place and not this. And that's when slowly they start to sort of engage a little bit more and imagine themselves there. Um, and so I think, finding those little glimpses of like, do you think you want to be with 2,000 people? Do you think you want to be with 35,000 people? Just, yeah, and everything in between. Sort of imagining that can help them maybe get a little more connected and then maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say enthusiastic, but just more motivated in the process. Because once they have some insight, there's actually a lot more options of like, okay, well then you can fill your list with, the range of schools that might be possible, likely, hopeful, that can then create a little bit more inspiration. And so I think some of it really is just taking time with the process. Um, and and I think it makes sense if they have no clue what they want right now. And they might not even have a clue until they're deciding. I have definitely had seniors in my office on like, you know, 48 hours before May 1st or whatever, like just the final hour, really trying to decide, do I want this or that? And it can be a really hard decision. And yet that's also kind of exciting because it's like, well, either way, you have two places you're interested in and you can see yourself and sort of imagining, knowing that over the course of the process, they start imagining themselves and seeing themselves out of high school in a different way. And then just the other piece I want to say is, I didn't say this before, but it's also important for us to remember um, that this is a major life transition, right? And so it's not like some people look back on their college years and are like, those were amazing. And I have great memories of college, but I don't always remember all the hard stuff. And so I have to remind myself it was there and remind the kids, like, just once you choose your school doesn't mean choosing, that doesn't mean the journey's over. Like, and you've picked it, there's a whole trip ahead that has ups and downs, and it's going to be a process. It's going to take time, and you don't have to, it's not like an instant fall in love as much as it's I can see myself growing and learning and finding myself here. And so I think sort of the way we pose it can be really important as well.
Noah, it looks like you have a question or a comment.
How'd you know? You must know me so well. Um, I was going to say, first of all, about the last piece. That's a very major piece. I think a lot of parents remember their college. They forget the transition piece. I think, definitely prepare for that just because it's there. But my point was going to be to Wendy, something I think is really, really important. Yeah, and Lauren is really great with that. It's really great if you can have your child talk to, and you should talk to people that are in the college that we know. So like, talk if Usher is thinking of something specific, and you can find people who are currently there or recently, very recently have been there. I think that is such a wonderful way to really get a gauge into what's happening there. How does it actually feel, and how to prepare once you choose it. I just wanted to kind of put that little piece out there.
Mhm. Yeah, we do have JCHS alums in lots of places. And I found, they don't have to be people that were friends of your student or necessarily like them to still have some perspective on coming from the environment at JCHS to that other institution and what that might feel like and what they might experience. And I think our alums generally are quite eager to share how they're feeling, for better or for worse, wherever they are. So let me know. I mean, oftentimes, obviously, we're such a small school that folks know folks on different campuses, but I can always look at my history and find some connections if you need to be connected with folks. So, Amy.
I just wanted to piggyback on that because similarly to talking to somebody who went there or recently went there, Caleb spoke with a professor in a major that he's interested in at a current university. So a friend's dad, our friend's a friend's son was a teacher at San Francisco State in the department that Caleb's interested in going into. And so we had him bring any questions he had and talk to that person for half an hour. And Caleb found it really inspiring and helpful. So that's another thing. Like if you know any teachers or other professionals in the field that are connected to a university that might be able to answer questions, that can be helpful too.
Any other last thoughts for Julie? Because she will have to scoot soon and take her daughter somewhere.
I also want to add that one of the and Lauren, I don't know exactly when this happens, but one of the great resources at our school is the students a year older, who have gone through the process. And one of the reasons one of the things that I think is so helpful is that you have probably all looked at the lists of where students have applied and even where they've gone, and it's vast. Like there are so many schools out there, and I think sometimes our students and our families don't realize the range of schools and the wonderful qualities of these schools. Sometimes we get caught in, certain names or certain types of schools. But we have students thriving in so many different places and applying to so many different places. And I think that can be really reassuring, just even seeing like just schools they haven't heard of or hadn't thought of, seeing peers that they know from the year before, even, a couple years before, applying to and looking at other schools can be really inspiring and sort of expansive for the process. And so I definitely, and Lauren, did the seniors, I just don't remember this, did the current seniors talk to current juniors at the end of the year?
Yeah, we usually do that in May, where we'll use one of the flex blocks. I'll pick a couple of seniors that have had different types of processes and are going different places to come talk about the situation and take questions from juniors about, what they found helpful, what they would do differently if they could go back. So, and generally, I try and do that with parents as well. So, try and have some senior parents in at the end of the year to talk about what just happened and if they've got any advice or thoughts for you. So yes, yeah, try.
Right. And I will say from the parent perspective, I found that very helpful because last year was my first time doing that session with you, Lauren. And so the other piece that I want to name actually that comes up in my office a fair amount is just the financial piece. It's really intense applying to college, and we have a range of experiences for all our students every year. And so sometimes there's like um, it's not necessarily the schools that are the stressors, but it's the finances for the parents or for the students or for everybody. And so I want to name that there's multiple layers of this experience for everybody, and it's different for each family. And so sort of just recognizing and being aware of where your family lies, and keeping your teen as aware as appropriate of what's accessible and what's not accessible, and also reminding them that not everybody is going through it the same way financially. And so sometimes, people might be super eligible for the same school, but it might turn out differently for different students. And so just recognizing that that's a range of life experiences that we see in every aspect of the way we live, and so, but that does come up in the college process. And so sort of reminding your students and yourself just to take a breath and know that each family is different. There's a fit for everybody, and the process might look different for everybody. But there are a range of ways to learn how to navigate it wherever your family lies in that realm. But I have a note to mention that, but I forgot to mention it earlier when it comes to sort of all the different things that people are holding this year. It is lovely to see you all. As Lauren said, I do need to go. If anyone needs anything, reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk on the phone or email or do a Google Meet. And I wish you all as much peace as possible through this process.
Thank you so much,
See you
Julie.
later. Bye, guys.
Yep. So with that, I will just see if anyone has general college search, college advising questions. I will give a brief update because I think what I've been fielding the most, besides course scheduling questions, is around the testing situation, which is unfortunately still stupid right now. But College Board has been very responsive with me. They've not always been 100% accurate about whether there are seats available at certain test spots this spring. But it does seem as though they have been contracting with some hotels with Moscone Center. So they are moving some registrations somewhere closer to your zip code as things open up. And as they continue to let me know that more seats have opened up closer to home, I will push that out to you all. So apologies that it's been difficult to find sitting locally. I do feel like they are actively working on it. ACT has been a bit of a different story. I have been able to find a human to correspond with about that. She has been a little bit of, well, if more high schools would offer testing, then you wouldn't have a problem. So that's great. But they, again, they have my information and said if more seats, become open, they will let me know. And of course, all these places ask, will JCHS be a testing center? And we have gone back and forth on that over the years. It is difficult for us with security reasons to just open up the space to the general public, and the number of seats would be limited. Even if we did open ourselves up as a national testing center, there's not any guarantee our students would have priorities for those spots, right? So we do offer the SAT at JCHS in the fall. We haven't historically offered the ACT, but I may have to look into that if this spring things don't start to turn around in another few weeks. So appreciate everyone's patience. We are all beholden to a system much larger than just me. So it is what it is. But that's what I know at this moment about test sittings. Are there other questions about anything that you are thinking about at home, your kids are grappling with? Maybe not.
I have another.
Yeah, go for it.
So we've gone on a few college tours and it's students. Like in one case, it was like literally a freshman. I was like, well, that's interesting. It was like you've been here like 2 months. But
Right.
anyway, lovely, lovely person. But I just wonder, is there any way to get more out of knowing that it's students and like the another tour we had was like a junior in a major similar to like something Ash, like really like a great connection, like person for Asher in particular. But like, right, it's catch the catch can, right? Like you're not guaranteed. Is there any way to get more out of the tours? It really just like you're just walking around, getting a sense of place, looking like you talked, like Julie talked about, like looking at the students, or like you talked about, like looking at the students, kind of giving a feel for the place. Or is there any way knowing that you have no control of like what you see or like who you get, like how to get more out of that hour and
Yeah.
a half?
Right. So those are, typically kind of a fixed process, as you've noted, and they can run the gamut about quality and, match with your particular child and student. Sometimes I go a long way to make a visit, and sometimes I've got someone from California who's like doing, and giving me really something useful. And sometimes it's someone who lives half an hour away and is talking about things that feel less relevant to our kids. You don't have a lot of control in that introduction. But I will say, depending on your interest in the school, your investment in really learning more about it, and distance from home, this is your one shot to kind of get a look at this place. There are some additional things you could do. I would say, sometimes asking the admission office, are we able to go get a meal on campus? That can sometimes they'll give you vouchers, so it's free, and you can go test the quality of the food and do some people watching and all of that. You can also ask them if they allow prospective students to sit in on a class. That is more typical once you're admitted. There will be this range of like red carpet rolling out once you're an admitted student about, this is an admitted weekend or an admitted day where you can do all the things. You hear a panel from financial aid and student life and go to a class and maybe even spend the night in a dorm room. But I think waiting until you're admitted to do that at multiple places, you just run into a crazy time crunch, right? Because there are some schools that will not notify until towards the end of March in senior year, and you need to have made a decision by May 1st. So if there are places that you start to feel more inclined towards, it might make sense as a prospective student rather than an admitted student to try and do something that's a little bit more robust. And know that your admission officer at most institutions, I think the smaller the school, the more helpful they can be to you. But you should use them as a bit of a concierge, like you're at a hotel, and there is someone responsible for JCHS at most colleges. And doing some quick Googling, admission staff at University of Vermont, and then it says find your counselor, and you sort on California, and you sort on Northern, and you sort on San Francisco County. You will usually be able to find a human that's responsible for for us, and email them and say, is there a Jewish student we could be in touch with? Someone in Hillel? Is there a chemistry major, you're aware of? We really want to talk to a professor in the business, faculty. So you can ask these questions of the admission office, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to be able to provide you with some resources there, a name, an email address, someone to hook up with to get some more detailed information that might feel relevant to you. So know that that is absolutely well within your right. And if they aren't able to do it, they'll let you know that. And I think that sometimes how schools respond to this kind of request and these kind of interactions can be indicative of how you're going to be treated as a student, which is also helpful. Sometimes we get no response. We get a very superficial or clipped response. Sometimes we get, the red carpet rolled out and all sorts of assistance and help. And, I think about this as a free sample of life as a student on the campus and to pay attention to that as well. So I don't know if that helps.
That does. Can I just ask one clarifying question? In terms of this reaching out like to an admissions office or any of that, is it okay for a parent to do that, or should it really be the student?
Yeah.
Like when is it okay for a parent to do that versus like you need to tell your student to do this? Like,
Right, right. Great question. I think when we're looking at logistics, like we're coming to campus, I'm trying to arrange some things for my child. I think it's fine for the parent to be reaching out saying, oh, I'm helping to set up the itinerary. I'm hoping you can help me. If it's wanting to just have some conversations with people, it might be better if the student reaches out. And you can certainly sit down with them and help draft that email, or I can do that as well. I think there's for some students, some nervousness around reaching out to adults and wanting to make sure things are formatted well and they're doing it right, right? So happy to help with that. But I would kind of split it into more conversational, sort of things with the rep versus trying to plan out something about our trip, if that makes sense.
okay, yeah, thanks.
Mhm. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, we've been a very attentive audience this morning. Know that you can always email me with other questions. And when you get the emails that have my signature on them, that doesn't always come with the SCORE emails, but in my signature, there's always a link to my calendar. Please feel free to sign up for an appointment with me if you want to chat, have some more individual questions. I'm here to help. And next month, it's first on my list to do today. My hope is that we can get a couple of admission reps in here and have them be the bulk of the conversation in the morning and letting you know that they are human beings who very much care about your kids and maybe have some advice for you as you approach the rest of the process. So once I get them booked, I will let you know more about that. So until then, I hope you have a great week. Thank you. Goodbye.